Now invite Councillor O'Brien to give us a karakia to open the meeting. Thank you, Councillor.
Morena tātou, mauki whakawā te timatanga tātou la. O tira te inui tātou, ka tohi o te tohi anuku, ka tohi o te tohi arangi, I tupu I hoko ngā pū, ngā more, ngā pū ke ngā wānanga ngā tauira. A tēnei te kimi no te rapu no I te taketake I tāhuru no ngā arangi tū. Whakaia kia rite, uhi, oero, tau mai te Māori, haumi e ui e taiki. Kia ora tātou.
Right, so to begin with, welcome councillors and staff and members of the public. Council and Standing Committee meetings are live streamed on Council's website and YouTube channel. The public gallery attendees' presence implies your consent to being broadcast if the camera happens to swing round that way. Further information about live streaming protocols can be found on the Council's website. So in terms of health and safety, in case of an emergency, follow the building wardens to the nearest exit, and there's one just over here. And the scaffolders have left a pathway out, so we won't be locked in. The meeting point is across the road at Peace Park, over by the museum. And the bathroom facilities are located where you came in, opposite the foyer entrance. So we'll move into the meeting proper. And the first item is item number 3, which is apologies. And we have an apology from Deputy Mayor Emick. So would someone like to, unless we have any other apologies? There being none, have Councillor Isles moves, second. Councillor Dukes, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Acknowledgements and tributes, are there any? If not, we'll go to conflicts of interest. So do members have any conflicts of interest? There being none, we'll move to item 6, and there's no public forum today. So we'll move to confirmation of minutes, which were on 29th of May and the Thursday the 5th of June. So are there any corrections to those? If not, ask a mover and a seconder. Councillor Isles, Councillor Tanchos. So the motion is that the minutes of the Infrastructure and Planning Committee meeting held on Thursday the 29th of May 2025 and Thursday 5th of June 2025 be confirmed as true and correct record. So we have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Isles and Councillor Tanchos. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item is the 8.1, pages 11 to 29 on our agenda, and that's airport statement of intent. So Mark, are you reading that? Thank you.
Good morning. So I'll just, there's a couple of clarifications on the statement of intent, but that I'll just run through quickly, just assuming that the paper has been read. But as you would have seen, part of the report or this statement of intent is in part a catch-up from 2024, and then it takes us out to 2027. This was endorsed by a previous CFO to be presented to the Infrastructure and Planning Committee. MOT have been consulted throughout and they have no further feedback to make on the statement of intent. Just one little bit of a clarification, since the statement of intent and report was submitted to the Infrastructure and Planning Committee for review, there seems to be a little bit of, I'm not sure if it's an error, but the financials from the 23-24 financial year represented in the statement of intent don't seem to align with the actual financials that we have. So I just need to take that back to our finance team just to clarify that. So there is still some work to do on that part of the statement of intent, but that will be corrected before it's presented to Council for final adoption. So I'm open to any questions or suggestions from there.
So we'll recommend it on the proviso that correction is made.
Yeah, that would be
What you're saying, okay. So question of clarification? You, Luca?
I suppose there's an option to make adjustments before final adoption at the council meeting. Would that be correct?
yeah, absolutely.
Because I've got a few things I'd like to, but maybe in the debate part.
I just before I invite Councillor Tangos, I just wondered in the beginning, Mark, the pictures showed the pictures of the beach, and I wondered how relevant that was to the airport thing, but...
Yeah, they can be changed. There's a little bit of a story behind that. And as you know, the airport is a bit of a dynamic kind of enterprise at the moment with operators and stuff like that. So rather than having images that could be out of date in a pretty short period of time, our graphics guys just use some standard imagery. But yeah, certainly can take that on board and make it more representative of the airport and yeah.
Thank you. Now, just before I invite Councillor Tangos, I omitted to welcome Janine and Wilson, who are joining us online. So welcome, people. Councillor Tangos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for bringing this to us today. Just had a couple of questions, and some of them are actually historical rather than kind of... But my first one was around the grass runway. I was just curious because it says that the vessels that use the grass runway can use the sealed runway. And then it says the sealed and grass runways do not have the required separation to permit simultaneous operation. And I'm wondering why do, if anyone can use both of them and you can't use them at the same time, why do we have grass and sealed?
That's actually a really good question, to be honest with you. But I think it's not unusual for any aerodrome to have a grass and a seal because the grass is less. It sort of wears out aircraft slower than if they would use the seal, especially around tyres and brakes and stuff like that. So it's not unusual to have both. The issue around separation is caused. That's just back in the day they just didn't put enough of a separation between the seal and the grass, which means that legally they can't operate at the same time, which is...
Seems unfortunate.
Pardon me?
Seems unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, because it effectively, where you could double your capacity, you can't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you follow that sort of conversation on to a natural conclusion, there's no rock solid reason why you should retain a grass runway other than it's always kind of been there.
But you're saying that the grass one, maybe I guess lighter aircraft prefer it because it means less wear and tear on the planes when they're taken off?
Yeah.
Is that significant? Like a significant difference?
Oh, to them it probably is,
Right. And does it make a significant difference to the cost of maintenance to maintain them both?
No, not really. It just, in terms of ground maintenance, it's almost zero really.
Right.
It's really just included in part of the mowing
Right, okay.
sort of program really.
And just my last question on that then is there, so I'm assuming there wouldn't be the space and or it wouldn't be worth the cost to put in another grass strip where you could have the separation?
Yeah, cost being the determining factor.
Right, okay.
Really. I mean, if we were to have the demand where it became a safety issue and we needed to deal with that, then obviously it would probably a business case would stack up to create the separation, but we just don't have the volume to justify that conversation really.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I suppose it's all a matter of timing, isn't it? Where you're taking off and landing, where You could work it by.
Yeah, and exactly. And we've sort of reminded users of the mandatory requirements and, what defines a takeoff and what defines a landing. And so I think providing some of that clarity helped them a little bit. So I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of what they can and can't do. So we've provided that for them. So hopefully that's created a little bit more usability of both runways.
So any further questions, clarification?
Yeah, thank you. Moving to there's a little table with some financials on there, and you've said that this needs to be adjusted. So it might be that my question becomes redundant, but I was just interested in, so in terms of the operation expenditure, the OPEX, the income went up quite a bit from the 23-24 to the 24-25 year. And I'm interested in what that is. And then also the expenditure also went up considerably in the same period and then has come back a little bit. And the explanation at the bottom says operating costs have increased due to CAA requirements to implement a safety management system. That's quite a big jump though. That's over 300,000 into 1 year. Could you just elaborate a tiny bit on that?
Sorry, I'll just bring it up myself. So you're referring to the 23-24?
Yeah, this is on page 5. And so looking at the difference between the 23-24 year and the
Yep.
24-25 year. Because both the income's gone up a little bit, but the expenditure's gone up quite a lot.
Yeah. And so that's the very column that we're referring to. And that if you'll see in the bottom there, the surplus says, the deficit says 482. The financial printout that I've seen from that period indicates that should read 770.
Oh, really?
Odd. So there's that column is the area that we need to have corrected. So if that is, by my reading, somewhere near, then I think it probably kind of makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, if it's that kind of figure, that's quite a different conclusion.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. And look, to be honest with you, this went through a whole bunch of eyes, including the MOT twice, and we only picked this up very late. So I apologise for that. We should have picked it up earlier. So that's going to be adjusted, and we are going to approve this subject to the recommendations. When will we see those figures? I'll get straight onto it and get that adjustment made straight away.
Okay.
And then
could you send that out to us just so we can see
Absolutely.
it? Yeah,
Yep.
Thank you. That's cool. And I'll just say one last question, which actually it's a bit out of order because it's not quite in the statement of intent, but the Chief Executive's update the other day had a picture of a light plane that was being put, and I saw it when I was out at the airport, and I was wondering what's the story with that? What is that?
So we have a bit of a relationship with Classic Flyers at the Mount, and they had that as a playground item down there.
Oh, yeah.
And they've basically loaned it to us just to put on the grass for the kids to play on.
Oh, cool.
If parents go to the cafe, it's something they can climb all over.
Oh, nice.
So they offered it to us, we accepted it.
Cool. Thank you. That's great.
So just before I invite Councillor Boynton, just remembering that this is just a recommendation to council, so we'll have a rider about that is going to be an adjustment.
Of course. Yeah, thank you for that.
Councillor Boynton, thank you.
Oh, kia ora. I know that it has come up before, but in referring to number 9, which is around the distributions to joint venture parties, just wondering whether, this question is in general, is there an update in terms of the situation or the government's contributions to the joint venture given the deficits that are projected with the costings, even though we've got to have an update of those financials, because that, this statement intent going out to the public, people are going to question, obviously, the amount of deficit that is projected, and so I'm just wanting to see, do we have an update in terms of the government's contribution as it is a joint venture.
Yeah, absolutely. The part of the consultation process with the ministry. So if we rewind, one of the key reasons we wanted to align this out to 2027 was to align it with our own LTP funding, which also aligns to the ministry's appropriation sort of program. And so when this went through the consultation process with the ministry, they in effect approved the cover of those deficits because they can see what's coming up. In addition to that, we run a CapEx works program which they accept as well, and they cover 50% of our capital or critical CapEx work for the airport, so stuff around the runway and stuff that's required to be operational. So they've seen these. Obviously there's this adjustment that they'll have to get across now, but they're aware of their commitment coming up out to 2027, sorry.
Thank you for that. That's good news. Is there any ways in which we as a council can further support that or solidify that that's going to happen?
Other than this?
Other than this, like, is there any possibility of being able to get, is that written anywhere, is that confirmed anywhere, that will be shored up?
Only in communications with the ministry through the appropriation work that we've done with them. So there's no standalone agreement, if you like, other than this and that work that we've done with them that indicates what their commitment will be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor James, have you got any comment? No? So I'll put the motion is on page 11 of our agenda. There's 2 items, and I'll read them out. That the Whakatane Airport draft statement of intent for a period of 3 July 24 to 30 June 27 report be received, and that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee recommends that Council approve the Whakatane Airport draft statement of intent for the period 1 July to 30 June 27. I think, can we add that the adjustments will be made prior to the council meeting? Put that in. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Boynton, Councillor Dukes. So any debate?
I'm not sure if it's debate or question, but anyway, I left it to this section. With regard to the financials on page 20, I'm just wondering if in the statement of intent we can have some stronger wording about trying to achieve financial sustainability, and also given that we're exploring some possibilities, some of which are included in the airport master plan, just to bolster it in that. I mean, I'm not totally familiar with statements of intent, but it could be our intent to bring it into financial sustainability by looking at other revenue sources. And of course, there's the solar possibilities, which we're in the sort of initial stages of exploring, I suppose. So that could be one avenue for turning it into a revenue generator. And I guess I'd also like to know what the energy consumption of the airport itself is. So there's some missing data there. So I'm just wondering about that but given that this is a draft, that it's being just, it still needs to be signed off by full council, I guess there's an opportunity to do that. And on that basis, I'm prepared to support this.
Yep. Councillor Boynton.
Yes, I'm happy to support this, and I do support the comments made by the Mayor in regards to looking at other sources of revenue. I would also like to support, I see there is engagement there with iwi, but also to strengthen that relationship, given that they are actually a third party or key party to the whenua that is there. And the legal actual relationship that is placed with the airport is that Ngāti Awa is a key part of that arrangement, and that we see something strengthened either in the wording or action around acknowledging the ties, not only the historic ties, but the actual legal ties to this agreement and the operation of the airport. Thank you.
Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Councillor Boynton, on that point that she has raised, how are things progressing regards our work plan with Taifakaya, the iwi?
Well, Hone might be able to speak to that a little more, but we've got a works plan that is sitting with them now, so they're aware of what work is projected out for this calendar year at least. After that, it's pretty much BAU until we finish some of the feasibility work, to be honest, so there's not a lot of actual capital work going on until some of that work's been finished. But we have pretty regular contact with Taifakaya.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
So just remembering we're in debate, not question time. So anyway, Councillor Dennis.
Well, apologies, Mr. Chairman, but it is a point of clarification because I had my hand up before you called for a motion and a seconder. But I just want to clarify in my own head that this is, we are retrospectively approving this from the 1st of July 2024, aren't we? Is that why we don't have Sun Air in there as a commercial?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, no further debate, then I'll call for a mover and a seconder. We have Councillor Boynton as the mover and Councillor Dukes as the seconder. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next item is item 8.2, pages 30 to 89, Three Waters Consent Replacement Program. So we have Janine online and Jess and Nicholas joining. Jess?
Yep.
Thank you.
And then Craig McKibben.
And Craig. Welcome, team. Are you going to lead, Janine? Is it?
Yep, we're going to do a shared quick presentation. There's just 4 little slides. We thought you could give you an update this time. So morena tātou from sunny Christchurch today. I'm just going to start off with a couple of overarching slides that support the report, and then Jess is going to talk to where we're up to on all our consent replacement projects. So next slide, please. Is it Jess or Alex? Thank you. So what we're wanting to share with Council today is we have the program plan and the comms and engagement strategy ready for endorsement. These have both been developed in partnership with the technical team, and then also through the program steering group who saw them and then endorsed them to come forward to the Infrastructure and Planning Committee. So just noting that the program plan that is on the agenda today, that is for the whole resource consent replacement program. So we just took a little bit of time to go back and reflect what is emerging out of the new legislation and around the standards, and just make sure that our timeframes were appropriate with that. And in doing that, what that meant, because we're still waiting for information to come out around the performance standards for wastewater, was that we have put a key focus on the water consents for the next 12 months to get them all well underway, and especially the like-for-likes completed by the middle of next year. So that is all underway. Each project, or the relevant projects, such as our 4 wastewater consent replacements and our 1 big water with Whakatane o Hopi, they will all have their own separate little project plans and comms and engagement strategies, but they will sit underneath this big program plan, and we will review this on an ongoing basis, such as the merging legislation comes through. We will review and make sure the program plan stays valid and fit for purpose. Just the next slide, please, Jess. Exactly the same with the comms and engagement strategy, and Craig's with us today to talk to this. So he's developed this with the technical team, and this has also been through the program steering group. Again, it sits at the program level, outlines the whole way that we will do comms and engagement across that program, and then each of our more substantive projects will have subsequent comms and engagement plans and iwi engagement plans that are relevant for that project and that place. And again, they will be updated as we move through the program. So they're both on the agenda today. And then I'll let Jess speak to the next two.
Morena koutou. So I'm just going to run through each of our projects that we've got underway, starting with the water consents. So we have a total of 8 water consents that need replacement by 1st of October 2026. And pleased to say we're well underway with obtaining those consents. So the first one is the Whakatane o Hopi water. This is probably the most challenging water consent that we've got, acknowledging that we've got a current river uptake. We've got a salt wedge that's quite close and it's quite prone to contamination from the river. So there is a longer term strategy to look at integrating the Paul Road groundwater supply and supplying that to Whakatane. So with that consent, we've commissioned Te Reo Lemons to undertake a planning assessment that will look at how we consent the river uptake in the short term while we develop a longer term strategy to bring in water from Paul Road. With the like-for-like water consents, we've got Taneatua water, and that's the first one off the books, basically. That's been lodged with BOPRC since this was prepared. We've done all iwi consultation and technical work required, so that consent is able to continually lawfully operate under what's called Section 124 while it continues to be processed. And then the other like-for-like water consent takes, and what I mean by like-for-like is that we're applying for similar volume of water. It meets the needs of the community, and no changes are being requested. So for those other like-for-like water consents, we'll have a mix of in-house and consultant delivery, and we've got planners assigned to each of those water consents to begin work on those. Now, jumping into wastewater, so Whakatane and Edgecombe are in the early stages. That's in recognition that we had a joint project with Fonterra. Ultimately, that has now concluded, and we are progressing standalone, looking at options for upgrading. So we'll be doing some early project scoping. Those projects are really contingent on those wastewater standards, and we have been in communication with Taumata Arawai, just trying to get some more security around when we think those standards will drop, and they're sort of saying around October, November. Taneatua and Murupara, less contingent on the wastewater standards, particularly in Murupara where we know there's a strong preference for discharge to land, and the wastewater standards actually don't look too different. The process doesn't change too much from current. So that's underway. We've developed a project plan, comms and engagement plan and iwi engagement plan for that project, and we'll start looking at options for Murupara in the near future. And Taneatua is similar. We're going to try and run those projects in parallel and get some efficiencies. Glenn Cooper will be project managing Taneatua, and just sort of in early discussions with Te Taumatua about a joint project manager approach for that project. And
awesome.
That's my
thanks, Jess. Yep. So that's just the update on where we are on the full program, and obviously with the development of the program plan and the comms and engagement strategy, that gives us good position to move forward and just continue to push on with the delivery of those large projects. So we're happy to take any questions.
Right, so questions and clarification, Mayor Luca?
With respect to the breakdown between consultants and in-house provision of services for these consents, can I have an idea of what the breakdown is? Are we doing most of it via consultants, or I guess you've got a percentage number you can give. And also, given that, everybody's rushing to try and do consents at the same time, there must be a hell of a demand on consultants, which probably suggests to me that they're able to charge what they like almost. Is there any of that effect there, or?
No,
Yep,
oh,
you go, Jess.
okay. So with the water consents, there is a healthy mix of in-house and external. We've got local suppliers and actually a planner that used to be part of Nicholas's team, so she knows the water situation in Whakatane really well. We do go through a process with, through procurement of obtaining 3 quotes at a minimum. So we are cost effective in that regard, looking at both who can do the work most efficiently and produce what we need, but also from a cost factor, who can deliver the work in a cost effective manner.
Yeah, well, so if I can have some numbers later on, or sometime, that'd be great. On Glenn Cooper, he's a contractor now, working 3 days or something, is it?
Yeah.
On an hourly basis, does he get paid more as a contractor versus being a full employee? Substantially
Yes, he
more?
does.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just to give some bigger context, we did go through a robust recruitment process trying to recruit for a project manager and several planners, and we just didn't obtain the people or attract the people with the right level of expertise. This is a really complex consenting process, and we attracted sort of graduate planners, which in a normal circumstance you could train up those planners and get them to a point where they're ready, but these have really strong or stringent deadlines, and you have to know water consenting really well.
I guess that for like replacements, that they're fairly simple. They should be, I guess. So a graduate planner could probably handle that, but not the more complex ones. Or is that an unfair assumption?
Yeah, you still need a really good understanding of the planning framework. There isn't a provision in the RMA to simply, you can't just roll over an existing consent, you can't just renew it. Every consent application still needs to be tested as if it was essentially a new activity. It's just the way that the law is, the RMA. There isn't any provision that allows you just to keep doing what you're doing as a rollover in the RMA. So just having a really good understanding of the planning framework, the policies, and also just a bit of knowledge of water resources is useful, and it's quite a difficult thing for a graduate to step in and do.
Sure, but graduates have to start somewhere, and they come much cheaper. So
they do, and if we had a longer,
you could get to keep them.
Yeah, I guess the challenge was we had that deadline when the consents were expiring, and so the time it would take to train them up is probably beyond when that deadline is, and so it was just a bit tight.
Thanks.
I think just be cautious about talking about who gets paid what, because it's probably confidential, but I think the question would be more likely, is it cost effective? And I think the other thing is, and we used to come across it, is someone would give you a cheap hourly rate but take longer, so the price is the same as if you hired someone that had a higher hourly rate. So we have to be cautious about that. Now, I think we have to accept that the team are being diligent about how they're going about this as well. So any further questions? Councillor Rolls and then Councillor Boynton.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just remind me, why did we rule out a partnership with Fonterra Edgecombe with regards to wastewater?
So with Fonterra, we undertook a feasibility study. Basically, it came down to cost. It was looking at about $300 million to combine, and we would take on the risk of essentially processing and taking on the compliance risk of having all of that manufacturing wastewater. Also, the wastewater standards came out and have a much, the required upgrades to meet those standards were not as stringent for us as they are for industry. So it didn't make sense at the time.
I think to add to that, councillor, we were going to end up carrying the baby, basically, and had to apply for consents and be responsible for the whole 9 yards. So it didn't actually make sense, really, in the end of the day. The Fonterra would have no liability, and we were carrying the whole lot. So, Councillor Boynton.
Oh, thank you to that. My questions sort of relate to that a little bit. I was just, you highlighted about the timeframes that were set and what would be applied for wouldn't change or would be a certain amount. My question there was, what is the likelihood of the usage or the need being extended in the future, and will there be more costs in having to readjust that?
So part of the consenting process looks at things like our spatial plan, which
Yes.
anticipate growth, and we'll need to take all of that into account when applying for the water consent. So at the moment, we actually don't use as much water as what we consented for, and under a lot of our consents, they're about 50%. So part of the process is showing that you've got a demonstrated need for that water, be it growth, economic development, all those kinds of things that need to be considered when we set the volume of water that's required.
Oh, thank you for that. And just following on, I just wanted to get clarity around us as a council being, I guess, ensured, if between the rollout of the old consent expiring and then us getting the new consent, what kind of security or cover is there for the council should anything go wrong and we fall outside that period of being unconsented?
So, yeah, that would not be a situation. We will be lodging consents. What happens is there's a section in the RMA that says if you lodge a consent application and it's accepted, 6 months prior to the expiry of the existing consent, you're granted Section 124 rights, which means you can continually operate under your existing consent while you work through the process of obtaining that new consent. So we would not be
liable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Dennis and then Councillor Ringio.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Page 49 in regard to the Edgecombe wastewater, you're right at the very top, where it talks about the issue with the amount of effluent being discharged into the Oamahu Canal. We all know that as this is going on from 1987 earthquake, that the pipes are cracked and we get a massive amount of stormwater entering into the sewage system. I thought a few years ago we were going to put in rubber liners into all those pipes. I thought that was about 2 years ago we approved that. Is that being done, because I thought that was going to solve this problem?
Jim, do you want to come forward and talk to that? Thanks.
Yes, good morning everybody. Yes, we've had a program for lining the pipes in Edgecombe. We've been doing that and there's more planned in the 10 years. I think this year we did last year over 600,000 in Edgecombe. It's not rubber either, it's a fiberglass impregnated material. The problem we've got in Edgecombe, and years ago we did smoke tests. So in other words, you put smoke down the sewer and you just look around town and you see smoke coming out of people's gully traps, their roofs, so there's a lot of stormwater getting in and you can get it corrected, but in a short time people go back, because in the earthquake, the south end of Edgecombe dropped about 1.8 and generally Edgecombe dropped about 0.6, so 2 feet lower than it used to be. There's a lot of land that's just had water lying around and high water tables. So that's a problem. And the other thing is, and I was a consultant at the time and I was asked to price a job to go and have a look at all the sewers, and I got turned down by the council of the day. It was a county actually. The council, to get the services up and running, went out quickly and connected everything up. And quite a lot of the private sewer lines that go from the boundary to the house had got minor cracking in them. A lot of them are glazed earthenware, so they crack really easy. And over the years, then the roots would grow into those pipes and open them up and cause water to get in. And you might remember Graham, who's recently died. He came to see me about it. He's a plumber.
So the amount that you've done already, has that shown a difference in the amount of water getting into that system from stormwater?
We haven't done a study, to be honest, to just check that out. A lot of the work that is done is to replace, yes, where we've put the CCT cameras through and see there's either damage or aged problems.
Councillor Ringiaho, then Mayor Victor.
Hey, Jess. It's probably more of a follow-up from Tony's questions around on the water supply, page 69. You have Ruatoki and Te Mahui not requiring that resource consent based on that same thing they currently already hold one?
So Te Mahui has an existing consent. With Ruatoki, we have actually just had a conversation recently with Jim that there is an ongoing investigation looking at alternate supplies for Ruatoki, but we will probably reconsent and reconsent that existing supply as a backup.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rolls.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't hear the actual question or the response. Was it around Te Mahui or did it involve Ruatoki as well? Because Ruatoki was the one that I was wanting to question. We know that they've been seeking an alternative water supply now for so many years, yet continually through this wet season we're having boil notices. And I'm just wondering at what stage or at what cost could that come back onto council?
I can talk to the consenting side, but Jim, do you want to talk about your alternate investigations?
Yes, so Councillor, it has been really frustrating. I think you've talked to me about this in some parts before. So because the river now has shifted so far over the valley, it's literally, sort of 2.5 metres from the bore, and the bore's only about 16 metres deep. So with the river being in flood, in front of the protection we've put around the bore, the sheet piling. So, the contact is when the water's been pulled into the bore by the pump, it's dragging the, muddy coloured water in. What we've done, because we've been trying to get, keep our money for doing the upgrade, but we've just had a breakthrough recently and we've got a supplier who's coming down, I think it's next week, to put a pilot plant in. And if that works, we then will pre-buy the filter equipment we need for our new bore, and that'll be in a container next to the existing pump station, and that'll probably reduce our problem down to about maybe a 1 in 20 year flood or something like that. So in other words, it'll manage a reasonable amount of turbidity until it just gets too great. So that's we're looking to buy that kit and have it in a container, and then when we build our new treatment plant, all that kit would be transferred to the new site.
If I may, so that is that we're going to be upgrading the existing site, is that correct? Is that what you're saying, Jim? As opposed to the site that was being test drilled, I believe, on private land, and that there was negotiation between landowner and TUT as to whether that was a viable site. Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, we've done a few boreholes. We were requested to do them on Paper Road, but yes, you're correct. The last one we decided to get as close as we could to our existing bore, but on elevated land, and that turned out unfortunately to have high iron and manganese. So we're now proposing to drill down on the river flat, and we've got approval for access through some people's property to drill that. It's on Paper Road, and that will be about 120 metres from the river. but down on that, the river flat, which is subject to flooding. But a new bore there, we would ensure that it had surface protection to avoid contamination from the river, and because of the distance, it should not have that same aspect for pulling as much turbid water through when it's flooding.
I guess that makes sense with the infrastructure that we've already got in place there, right? Thank you.
Hey, Luca, did you have a question before?
Yeah, I'm just wondering maybe for you, Jim, about the consenting process itself. When you, and there was some mention about the Whakatane water treatment plant being quite complicated. I mean, salt intrusion was mentioned and a few other things. When you consent the process, you've got a flow sheet. Do you include things that may happen, like the blue-green algae situation that we were looking into? Is that part of the consenting process, or is that included in the description of it, or not? And I'm not sure how far we got with that.
Yeah. I'd have to default to the planners for a specific answer to that, but I can advise that one of the issues we have when we do put in certain chemicals, that, for example, how we'd manage that algae, we've then got a product that we've got to get rid of. So if we are looking to either discharge that into the river or discharge the supernatant from that, meaning the liquid content, we would, we would have to include that in the consent, yes.
Right, and the blue-green algae situation has never arisen so far. Right, as things warm up.
Yeah, it's not really a consenting issue. It would be dealt with under drinking water standards. So the consent would focus on the effects of the water take, and the discharge, whatever's discharged
but not
back
on
in
the
the river.
process itself.
The process, no, that's not subject to the RMA. That would be the drinking water.
All right, thank you.
Right. Craig, you got anything to add?
No, nothing at this stage, but happy to take any questions on the communications and engagement approach.
Right. I think we might have exhausted the questions. Haven't missed anybody, have I? Two?
Just one question for you. With these wastewater plants, the projects that we have, if we're going to do done out for the sake of consistency, are we looking at contracting Lysol Glen and a project manager for each one of those wahi? Is Ngāti Manawa going to need a project manager within the Murupara wastewater space, just like Tāne Atua have? And is they going to be consistent with the other PSGs?
I wouldn't say there's a consistency approach other than we approach our iwi partners with an open mind. We have a conversation with them about our approach in Matata and what we've done there in terms of co-design. So with Tāne Atua, it's quite unique. They're supplying a project manager at their own cost, more recognising that it's a learning opportunity for them internally. That's how that has evolved. With our other iwi partners, definitely co-design is the basis for our partnership, and that has the potential to look slightly different depending on who we're working with.
Okay, so the recommendations are on page 30 of our agenda, and Councillor Dukes has signified she'd like to move that, so do I have a seconder? Councillor Dennis. I'll read the recommendations. There's three of them. That the Infrastructure and Planning Committee received the Three Waters Consent Replacement Program Update Report, July 2025. And two, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee endorsed the Three Waters Consent Replacement Project Plan as attached in Appendix A. And three, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee endorsed the Three Waters Consent Replacement Program Communications and Engagement Strategy as attached in Appendix B. So we have a move and a second. Do we have any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, team.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thank you for your good work. It's a bit of a challenge, but we're going to get there. Right. So our next item, 8.3, is the amendments to the Register of Parking Restrictions, Prohibitions and Limitations, and it's pages 90 to 108 on our agenda. So welcome, Wendy and Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Morena tātou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko putua ki te maunga, ko rangata ki te awa, ko waiahau te marae, ko Wendy taku ingoa, ko au te kaiwhakariti, o ko te au te kaiwhakariti hangarau o te kanahira. I'm Wendy, Technical Administrator for Transportation. I take the report as read, but just to quickly highlight the key features in our report, we have removed the broken yellow lines along Magavi Road, adjacent to the Peace Street Dairy, as agreed with the 2024 project for the Peace Street and Magavi Road roundabout. The second item that we have actioned has been the addition of broken yellow lines at the intersection of Patawai Road and Mill Road due to safety concerns from residents, members of the public exiting Patawai Road onto Mill Road. And the third item that we have in our report is a proposal for the installation of broken yellow lines along Suitors Ave, and that's because the road is very narrow and there are safety concerns and with the navigation and vehicles parking on each side of the road. So by installing those broken yellow lines, it will mitigate those issues. Joe and I myself are open to questions. Thank you.
So, points of clarification, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you for that report. I kind of agree with what you've done around the dairy, Magavi, on P Street. I'm happy with that. Just in the Suter Ave one, is the issue more that not so much the narrowness of the road, because a lot of places have narrow roads. Auckland is horrific, Wellington is horrific, and people just zigzag their way through. Is the issue more the fact of the extra amount of parking from staff from Pack and Save and also students from the school? Is that your main reason why we need to sort this out?
Thank you. We had a lot of concerns from the residents and also from the vehicles, trucking vehicles that are approaching into Pack and Save, coming from the Lovelock direction and down into Suitors Ave and then around into the Pack and Save. So navigating that road when there's vehicles parked on both sides can be quite dangerous and unsafe. So we did a survey, we did a consultation with the residents, and we sent out 60 hand-delivered letters to the residents. So some residents at the end of Goldstone Road and Lovelock Street, and of the feedback that we've received, the residents were more in favour of having at least broken yellow lines on one side, and it would make sense to have that on the eastern side so that the trucks, as they navigate the road, can come around and can easily travel down that road without vehicles parked there and then carry on their business, still leaving parking on the western side for residents or as such anyone else that wishes to park there.
Thank you.
Any further points of clarification? Councillor Boynton.
Just really comment really, and I'm just glad that there's been work being done with the dairy owner on Magavi in regards to that situation, given that they did experience quite a bit of a loss when there was a lot of roadworks for a long period of time. So I'm hoping that this change will help support his business and not lead to so much confusion around whether or not you're meant to be parked in that area and you've got yellow lines, because you've got a it's been shaped like you can park your car there to go in there, but then there's these yellow lines which makes it really confusing for customers. Thank you.
I I have a quick question, if I may, Wendy. You're grappling with increasing number of cars trying to park in places. So are you giving any thought to providing additional car parks, if you like, or areas of car park that can absorb some of these vehicles?
Through you, Chair. It's not something we're actively looking at the moment. There was plans a wee while ago to develop a parking strategy for Whakatane as a whole to address it in a more holistic way. But as you appreciate, with that extra parking demand, to actually implement any parking in the Kopio area would be quite expensive because you'd need to go through a land purchase process. There is significant parking around in the Pack and Save car park, which is probably a little bit underutilised for most of the year. It does get used during the sort of busier summer period, but there is quite a sufficient amount there for people. It's just obviously they do need to walk a little further to get to that parking.
Thank you. Any further points of clarification? If not, the recommendations are on page 90. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? Councillor Boynton, Councillor O'Brien. I'll read the recommendations. There's 3 of them. That the Infrastructure and Planning Committee receive the amendments to the Parking Restrictions, Prohibitions and Limitations Report 2025, and that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee approve the existing parking amendments and the proposed parking amendment, including the need for the amendments to be publicly notified as set out in Appendix A, Register of Parking Restrictions, Prohibitions and Limitations, Schedule of Amendments, July 2025, and 3, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee notes that once the parking amendments are in place, the parking restrictions, prohibitions and limitations register will be updated following public notification. So, any debate? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So, thank you, Wendy. First time presenting, done well. Good on you. So we'll do item 8.4 before we have a break, and that's on pages 109 to 117, and it's the approval for sale of lot and irrigation bore asset at Paul Road. So Jim, you're dealing with that. Welcome.
So, I assume you can wait for me to report. And I suspect someone's going to say, why are you gifting this to these people? The thing is, they've been using it since about, some of them, since the 80s, and they've always considered it theirs anyway, and we don't know what condition it's in, and we had to almost hold a shotgun over them, not quite, but to get them to agree to connect to the Otamahi water, drinking water supply, because we can put our hand on our hearts and say that's a water supply we manage. But this old system is connected to troughs with, pipe you buy from, farmlands and with wire, bits of wire, and some of it's been patched with, sort of tape. And so there's groundwater getting in, we think. There's no backflow prevention. There's the bore itself was an exploratory bore, so the type of pipe they used in those days is pretty skinny, so it could be having problems. And because we want to just basically get rid of it to get rid of the risk, we will have a clause for asses, so that if we had some money on it, it might infer that we back it up. So that's the main reason. And it really should have been done at the start, and I think it was just a bit of a oversight that it was on the property, and the owner it was actually put in by a Ministry of Works as an exploratory one, and because it wasn't being used, the local orchardists there asked if they could use it, and they got a resource consent, but they never signed up except the one person who made the application, so he was left carrying the can. And then when he got into his 80s, he didn't even live there anymore. He thought he had 25 people connected, there were 47, And Kevin Sullivan did a marvellous job going and visiting every one of those and talking them into paying the sort of, excuse me, $4,000 to connect to the drinking water supply. So this is what we want to do, is just get rid of it and take all the risk off us managing it.
Thank you. Questions of clarification, councillor Dennis?
Thank you for this, Jim. And this diagram's quite confusing for me to work out the driveways, etc. Can I just ask you, overall, is everyone in that area happy with this going ahead?
Yes. So just to explain, when you drive down Paul Road, you get to the end of the seal, which is basically at our gate to go into our treatment plant. The rest of Paul Road is not legal road. You know, there's about 5 or 6 properties down there, and that's why there's all those lines. They have easement over that.
Okay.
So one of the challenges was to get all of those people to agree to this little bit of their driveway being shared, so someone can have access to this side. So that's why it's got all those little complicated easements.
Are there many people using this small bore now? I know there were a lot and they sort of dwindled quite fast. Are there only 1 or 2 using it now?
I'm not quite sure. I know there's a iwi trust who's been talking with the chap who's fronting the society. Yeah, there was 17 at the start who showed interest, and then we got it all set up, and you're correct, they started dropping off, so I don't know how many they've got at the moment.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm happy with that, thank you.
Any further questions?
Oh, sorry, just one. If this little group collapses, what happens to that block of land? Will it revert back to us to shut down?
That's a good point. The lawyer didn't pick up what we'd do next there, but it will be come under the ownership of the society or the.
Yeah, and if the society collapses, if they all give up?
Well, in that's something we could put in the sale and purchase agreement, that it could come back to council, but it hasn't been decided.
But in that case, you'd end up wearing the can to shut the bore down and all that sort of stuff, which is more cost. So maybe just leave it as it is and they can sort it out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So the recommendations on page 109, and Mayor Luca's happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Yes.
Thank you. I remain a little bit confused about the history of this, and I guess not having been around as long as other members. So this board was established on this property, and we've purchased the property for our own purposes. I'm getting a shaking of the head from. Could you just repeat the history of this property again? Because I haven't fully understood it.
My understanding is that about in the late 70s, early 80s, the Ministry of Works was, I don't know, I think it might have even been the Catchment Commission of the day. They came and drilled Johnson Road bore, there's 2 bores there, because there was talk about it incentivising berry fruit growing in the area. And they also came over and did the Paul Road one. Then at the time, there was either no funding to do reticulation and bore development, or there weren't interested parties. So it wasn't, we call it capped off, but it wasn't actually, filled up with concrete, it was just left. And then the owner of the property where it was drilled, who had given approval for it, he approached a couple of others and said, why don't we put a resource consent application in, call it the Paul Road Irrigation Scheme, for for a water take from the then Catchment Commission. And so Stuart Morrison, who was one of the orchardists, he hand wrote up an agreement, which no one else signed, but then he went into the regional council, and because he didn't have a formal group at the time, he had to say that he was the consent holder. So he then, he didn't actually own that block, he owned the block next door. But the person who owned that block then sold it to someone else, and that person agreed to keep, those other 3 orchardists to use water. And then slowly but surely, as subdivision happened, people connected up to the supply. Stuart knew there were 25, or there or so, he said to me, but when we went round and door knocked, we found there were 47 that had sort of connected to a neighbour's supply, all the terrible things which, the government's trying to get councils to take over. So when it got to, so when in 2006, I think it was, council, because Opus had looked up the records and said this is a really good area for water supply. So council put down an exploratory bore and applied for a consent, and that was the beginning of our Otamahi water supply. We've now got 2 bores, and we've also got a capped exploratory bore to use for monitoring. And then we started getting this information. So the Otamahi water supply then became commissioned in 2017, and therefore we did have an alternative available to the community, because at that time the water was only sent to Edgecombe and Titeko and the environs around Titeko. They'd previously been connected through the Braemar scheme. So then there'd always been this grizzle from a couple of those people around the bore site that here they were sitting on all this water and they didn't have access to it. So conversations started with that community up to the point where we then got them to pay the contribution and pay for the reticulation to all their properties, and that was the $4,000 odd to do that. But some of them then said, we don't want to pay Wakatani equalised water price for farm work. We're happy for you guys to tell us we've got to drink the good water, but we want this other water for keeping our businesses going. So that's where, that's the background behind it.
So they're not necessarily all the same people who are on the reticulated supply and they're using
The original reticulation does extend past to properties that no longer are using it for irrigation, but have come over onto the council's supply. So we had this agreement with everybody that they could not connect to the irrigation supply or retain their connection unless they connected their house to the proper drinking water.
Right.
And that's really because that was a risk there, that some people would just keep using it and because it was on our land and we own the asset, we then inherited the problem.
I still don't think we should pay for the consent myself.
Okay, so looking for a seconder for that motion, Councillor Boynton.
I just wanted to know what is the value of the property? I mean, I know I'm still trying to get my head around the whole situation, because I'm probably looking at it wrong, but it sort of looks like that we're giving away an asset that somebody is going to gain financial benefit from in their use, and just in looking at other, or in the future, other parts of our community, whether that kind of same positive outlook to look for solutions for others is available. So yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it being given away, or an easy way, but also too that the council is going to then also cover costs for them to be able to receive it and benefit from it later. So yeah, what was the cost that we actually paid for that land? And I was just a bit concerned to hear how somehow the consent may have been obtained fraudulently. If they were saying that somebody went in to get the consent but they actually weren't the owner, so maybe I've got that wrong. But yeah, I want more reassurance around how much the council it's going to cost the council, because at the moment, we're being hit hard with around what we're spending on, what we're doing here. Water is a big issue, so I just really want to feel secure about this decision.
Do you want me to jump in, Jim? Yeah, I think firstly that this is a historic bore. I don't think we call it an asset. I think the risk is that it's not an asset at all, it's going to become a liability. But equally, the consent that operates, it runs out in 2026. So we've got no intention as the council to renew that consent. So it won't have any permission, if you like, to extract water beyond 2026. So the alternative for us at that point is to cap it at a cost. I think it's about $16,000, and let it just be, that's it, the end of it. What I think Jim has essentially negotiated through the whole program of getting these people moved onto a better drinking water supply is that some of them still want that asset. They'll take it over, they'll get a new consent for the take and maintain in whatever form they want for irrigation for their businesses. So I think what we thought was we were enhancing, if you like, the opportunity for them to continue to use it in the absence of us otherwise shutting it down and it not being of any use to anybody. So I think, it was the best of the situation we found ourselves in. I don't think, we're really trying to reduce, as Jim has said, risk, and I think liability for the council at a relatively cheap cost. The cost of the subdivision of 33 square metres of land, that's not much, is about $12,000. It gets handed over. Some people can make use of that supply if they choose to, and we get it off our books.
I think in essence, councillor, we're giving away liability and saving ourselves money at the same time. So I think that's a pretty good outcome, really, because some of the, as Mr. Bewley said, we would have to apply for consent, so that's quite a cost as well. And if we don't need it, then it's a waste of time us doing it. Let someone else worry about it.
Thank you for that. And there isn't any sort of event in which the council would end up having to pay them in the future if we needed to use that water or supply or anything.
No, I think it's a very limited take in it, isn't it, Jim? Our interest is in the Otamahi supply on the remainder of the block, and that's where we're focusing our time in terms of consents and potentially future consent for greater volume if we're looking at integrating schemes across the plains and potentially into Whakatane and Ahupi.
So I'd like to move on if we can, and we just need a seconder for the motion. We have Jukes. Okay. So we have Mayor Luca moved and Councillor Jukes seconded. And so I'll read the recommendations are on page 109, and there's 4 of them. That the approval for sale of irrigation bore asset and lot at Paul Road report be received. And 2, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee recommend the council approve the sale of Lot 1 containing irrigation bore being a subdivision of Lot 1 DP 464274 at 122A Paul Road, Awakiri, as shown on Plan 1575 SCO1 from 360 surveying to Paul Road Water Limited for the sum of $1. And 3, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee recommend the council authorise the Chief Executive to sign all documents necessary to commit the sale of Lot 1. And 4, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee notes the sale is subject to a resource consent application being granted to create Lot 1 with easements decided by an independent commissioner. So any debate? If there's none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. We'll take a break. It's nearly 15:15, so we'll come back at 10:30. Thank you. Right. We'll reconvene and welcome to Annie and Joe. We've saved the best piece till last. So there's two parts here. So the first part is 8.4 is relatively straightforward. So we'll get you to kick off, Annie or Joe or whoever's doing that. Welcome. The floor's yours.
It starts at 8.5 though, doesn't it?
I've got 8.4 here.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. 8.5.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair. Obviously here today to just talk through the consultation results for the proposed speed limit changes throughout the district. We'll take the report as read, but I just will say that it's obviously we've had a reasonably good response to the consultation. It has largely been opposed to the changes in speed limits, which is not entirely surprising. There is obviously a lot of opposition out there for these changes. I will just say that, you know, the staff recommendation is that the changes still proceed, and that is based on the fact that these are in line with the national guidelines that we've received. Very targeted changes, so they are very limited amount of our network that will be affected, but it is the worst in terms of our safety history. Yeah, obviously it will be a tough decision for councillors to make around that, given that there is that public opposition to it.
Thank you. So we'll deal with the first part of this, which is on page 118. And so question or clarification around what Joe's given us so far? None. So we'll, Councillor Riles.
Chair, when you said the questions around what Joe's given us so far, okay, all right, I'll hold my questions.
Okay, because we've got two parts here, really. I think what we'll do is take these recommendations from page 118. There's three of them, and then move to the more meaty part. Councillor Tanchos.
I just wanted to. I wasn't quite clear. What was the process for the consultation?
So for consultation on this, we're consulting in line with setting the speed limits rule for 2024, which sets out specific requirements around that. Largely, the consultation process was done online, but also through contacting our neighbouring councils, NZTA, and other significant stakeholders.
So I say that last bit again.
Others
About so online and
through direct communication with our other significant stakeholders.
Right. I'm just trying to get my head around the discrepancy between kind of the results showing up here and then some of the representations we've had. You know, like you think about West End, where we had quite a strong delegation from people who are users of that area who came and expressed quite a clear view. And then this is what we've got in here is a very different looking result. And I'm just trying to get my head around the difference and whether the people who've been putting their view in this consultation are they the users? Just trying to figure out where they're coming from, or whether it's just this general people don't like speed limits, so they just say no about things that they don't necessarily have a direct relationship with?
Yep, no, absolutely, that's clear. So what we saw with West End Road, for instance, the general population did not support, but when you look specifically at residents, they had obviously a greater proportion that were supporting, still not 100%, but you know, you got up above 60%, I think, for them. There is certainly an element of submitters who were going through the submission process and ticking all the no boxes. We didn't brief analysis on that, and there were only, of the 100 and odd submission, there was about 4 people who had just gone through and said no to everything. There are a number who went through and may have been neutral on some roads, and then in opposition to everything else. So with any consultation process, it is open to sort of that sort of manipulation. If there is someone, a group of people out there who are strongly opposed to a general principle, then yeah, that may have come through a little bit in this consultation. But yeah, so it's a fair call.
Can I just ask a supplementary? So the process is set out in the legislation that we have to follow, even though the results are actually not necessarily that helpful for us.
Yeah, the process is set out in that legislation, yeah.
All right, thank you.
So can we just clarify that, councillor? So the submissions are saying we don't want to change, we want to keep it as is, but you're saying that the legal status is that it's got to change, is that what we're saying?
No, I was just clarifying that the consultation process that we've used is kind of open to manipulation and doesn't necessarily ask the people who are the users of that stretch of road, but we're required to do that process by the legislation, even though the information we get from the process isn't necessarily that helpful, because what we really want to know is, for example, West End Road, the people who use West End Road and the people who live there, what do they think? But we hear from whoever decides to fill in the form, you know.
And I think, you know, for once in our term, we've probably got to take notice of the consultation process and what people have said. And I know there's some angst about the fact that, well, maybe they don't live on that road, or they don't live somewhere else, or there's not enough submissions. But to me, the people have spoken, and I think we've got to take note of that. But we'll deal with that a bit further down the track. I'll go Councillor Dukes, and then Councillor Boynton, and then Councillor Dennis.
I know we're going to discuss them in a little bit more detail, but my question was, so it's going with your recommendations, so it's on the list on page 119, number 5, Thornton Road, State Highway 30 to past Blueberry Corner. I know that we actually had discussions, and I can't remember if it was around the council table or the subcommittee, which I was on, about seasonal, rather than just it being black and white 100 to 80, but I'm just seeing that there's nothing coming through there about that potentially could have been a seasonal reduction to 80 Ks. It just seems to be 80.
So through the chair, the table is what the staff recommendation changes are and you know, their finality. The specific questions that the subcommittee wanted us to ask, we've addressed that in section 4.4.4. There's a section about the Thornton Road specific questions and the Ohope Road specific questions. And so with regards to the speed reductions, 54% of respondents' preference was for no speed reductions. 29% preferred all year round and 17% preferred seasonal. So of the people that preferred a reduction, more people preferred all year round than seasonal. So that's why our recommendation has been to put it in all year round, if that's what's agreed.
Councillor Boynton.
I just wondered, you know, rather than it being either all yes or no, where we've got evidence on the record of those certain groups, particularly with the West End, who have presented to the council, and the percentage between those who are against and for, whether or not that's sufficient evidence for change for that specific decision on that specific road, because there are other ones similar to the Thornton Road to Blueberry Corner, because there has already been recorded evidence of a want or a need or a request regarding that. There is a historic case to evidence the support that is there already. Whether or not some of these could be considered separately rather than it be all of this goes or all of it doesn't go. You've also got sort of similar things when it comes to, there are some of the roads like Shore Road, number 6, number 7, Thornton Road with the camping ground, that does have support, and also Reed Road. So those percentage of support gives us evidence that there is support for that. So my whakaaro really is, if we are able to separate out those who have supportive evidence for us to change, to approve those specific ones, and those where we haven't had historic records of evidence, that we do support the evidence that's come through in the consultation. Is that, is that something that's...
I was going to suggest, if I may, before we invite the next
Okay.
that we've got two parts here, and I just wonder whether we approve the first three recommendations and then deal with the meaty part, which is the speed changes.
Three, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I
Just
think
one
that's
of
the
my
way to go,
questions is
Mr.
about
Chair.
that recommendation 3. Some point of clarification. Do we have to review these every 3 years? Because it's a lot of time and resources and whatnot. Are we bound by the 3 years, or can we make them 5 years?
So there's no legal requirement to review speed limits at any particular time. That's just a recommendation from staff. 3 years will mean we can keep speed limits current when we have new developments coming online or the road environment changes, without necessarily doing it every 18 months or 6 months, which would be too onerous on staff. But also, I think as well, obviously having gone through the process now a few times, we've probably got the machine well oiled, if you will.
Thank you.
Sorry. Councillor Dennis and Mayor Luca, your questions about the speed.
Well, it was the same.
I was the next speaker.
When we separate off the first three and do the fourth separately, item by item, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we want to go item by item, but well, let's do the first three then, and then we can go into the speed changes. So if you're happy with that.
And can I just ask, I mean, council at any time can decide to convene and make a decision on anything. So if there is a problematic road, we could call an extraordinary meeting or add it onto an agenda and deal with that specific issue. If we decide we made a mistake, we can come back and we can change it. So there's no, we could just change that to put in that it's reviewed on a 3-yearly basis as required by council or something. But I think it's understood. We almost don't need to add it in there.
Okay. So,
My one was just a correction in the recommendation.
okay.
So it's just before we do start doing that. I raised it last time, but I see the error has still come through. So number 18 on a Hopi Road, it says that the current is 100. And I raised it last time, the current is 80. So it shouldn't have come through again as the error, and I think we need it correctly recorded that the current is 80, not 100, when it comes through to council for final adoption.
Point noted, councillor. So
So can I speak now, Mr. Chairman? I was meant to be after councillor Boynton. So can I speak?
But if you
But I want to speak on recommendation 2.
Okay.
Thank you. I see there's nothing in here about the new variable schools speed limits. So I've just got a couple of points of clarification. Are these the urban school zones? And by variable, are they what signs are going to go up? Are they going to be the flashing boards, or are they just going to be notices on a pole?
For two types, so we'll have a bit of both, a bit of a combination there. So for our main arterial roads, McAllister Street, Pahutakawa Ave, where we have those high-speed, high volumes of traffic, we'll be looking to install the electronic variables. For all the other signage, all the side roads and less busy arterials, we'll be looking at the static signs, which is similar to what they have in Australia, and what should be up at Waimana at the moment as well, which is just has the hours written underneath.
In regards, and So when you approach those schools, will there be saying 100 Ks or 50 Ks, whatever it is, and then you've got a little notice board that you hope people take notice of, or will there be on the main 50 Ks, will it have /30 Ks, or to let people know that there's a difference at different times?
So the signs are required to install are bound again by the legislation, and so they only have the school speed limit posted. So for instance, if we put them on James Street, it will just have 30 kilometres an hour and then the times that applies. There will be another sign at the end of the school zone reminding people that it's back up to 50.
Thank you.
But it won't have both the speeds.
Okay, second question, in regard to some of the rural schools like Otakuri, which is within the 350 metres of an arterial route, which is State Highway 32, I think it is, or 34, are we doing those? Because it'd be variable past Otakuri School. Will we then, because we do that, be doing it on the intersection?
So that will only apply to Otakuri Road itself, not to the State Highway. So the legislation's a little bit flexible in regards to the start and the end locations for those. But if there is a strong preference from councillors for us to look at a lower speed on the State Highway, we can work with NZTA to see if that can be implemented.
I thought the rule was if your school boundary of school property was within so many, I think it's 300 metres of a thing, you then have to extend that drop in speed limit across that next street.
Yeah, it's based on the distance from the school gate.
That's right.
So the school gate there, I wouldn't want to hazard a guess to the distance, but it would be getting close to where it's a requirement. But also there are provisions within it for circumstances when you're turning corners, etc., to have a shorter distance for that speed limit. Obviously, there's a lot of through traffic through that area, not impacting the school.
And so Thornton School was too far away from the intersection with Thornton Road, isn't it?
Yes.
What about Matatar School? Is very, very close to Pakau Street?
So my expectation was that NZTA would need to put in place variable speed limits at that location for the school.
And so the electronic notice boards, because they're quite expensive, there won't be that many of them. Okay, thank you.
So we're relative to the first. Yep, thank you.
Just with the recommendation of two regarding the schools, what Gavin's been asking about. So this has already been approved through council before when we've had this, or are we just approving that now?
So that recommendation is just noting it. It's legislatively required. There's no decision by council. The new rule for setting of speed limits around schools is black and white. There's very little discretion.
Consultation on it.
No, there's no consultation requirements because it's been set in stone what the direction is. What we will be doing is bringing a paper to council, one of the future IPCs, just providing the information along the lines of what Councillor Dennis was asking about, what schools are getting what signs set ups and exactly where those locations are and that sort of thing. So the installation of those school variable speed signs is required by 1 July 2026. So between now and then, sort of towards the end of this calendar year or maybe very early next calendar year, we'll provide that information report so council are aware of where those installations will go and where there is any room for decisions, those decisions will be brought to council.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so can we just move on and tidy that up then with those three recommendations? We have a mover and a seconder. Mayor Lurker, second Councillor Dennis. I'll read the three out. That the Infrastructure and Planning Committee receives a report approval of discretionary speed limit changes. 2, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee notes that installation of new variable school speed limits will be installed by 1 July 2026 as required by legislation and funded from within existing budgets. And 3, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee notes that speed limits are to be reviewed on a 3-yearly basis to remain relevant. So, any debate on those? If Councillor O'Brien?
I mean, they're going to remain relevant whether they're on a 3-yearly basis or not. So I'm not sure what that actually is signified. I just think that every 3 years is an overkill. Revisited in 5. The amount of resources and time spent on this is questionable.
Thank you. Councillor Tanjos?
I just want to say that I agree with Councillor O'Brien. I think we can spend a lot of time churning over this stuff. I would have thought once we've set a limit, I don't know, I'm not sure they all need to be reviewed every 3 years. But.
Okay. Any further? I'll put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Wish to be recorded, Councillor? Against Councillor O'Brien. Okay, so motion's passed. So let's move to item 4. And there's no item here about clarification, but I think we probably should just debate them if everybody's wishes right. But what I would suggest is that, from my observation, sure, items 6, 7 and 15 have been approved by consultation. I think we could, can we?
I actually agree with what you've just said, because what I did is impose the cut-off for the people who live near the road and say if there's more than 60% support, then we take them, because we are here to listen to what people have got to say. They live on the road. So I'm in favour of that, but I would possibly have added another one. But that's not a bad approach, Mr Chair, in my opinion.
So the other one you were thinking?
Possibly Willie Road. Number 1.
So
I've got 1, 6, 7, 8 and 15 to approve, in my opinion.
Yes.
By the people who would use it more than myself, how well used would how would the road be used by people who aren't the residents? Would it be majority of the residents are the ones that are user, or would it be used a lot by the general public? Because I'm not overly familiar with that one, sorry.
There's also an increasing number of subdivisions going up there. The subdivision on the right-hand side just going down towards the marae, that's been developed at the moment, so that's growing. Bigger than it was. There's also Marty Sutherland's old place, who's been subdivided. It has quite a high population, but it's that marae. They hold a lot of wānanga there, so you get full-size buses, you get minivans from Auckland all over the place. And it's where you get to the very top of the hill and it goes into the tar seal. There's a couple of really nasty little switchbacks in there on the metal where you get the people who are not used to the road go too fast. They push the metal into the sides. I was talking to a chap the other day who lives just below it on the left, and I think he's had 3 cars drop in to see him, like drop over the bank. It's about letting people know that it's not a safe road.
So interestingly, 75% oppose the changes against 22%, but do we take some licence and suggest that it goes back to the, or goes to 70? Is that what you're suggesting, Mayor?
I was particularly swayed by some of Councillor O'Brien's argument, because I don't actually know Withy Road very well, but it's unsealed, it's quite curvy, and so that might be one where I would not go with my general ethos, which is to follow what the people want when the majority is significant. This one, there isn't a significant majority for the change, but there could be arguments for it. And Gavin's just repeated some of what two said, so I'll have to defer to their greater knowledge of the road.
So for the purposes of moving forward, can we agree that item 1, 6, 7 and 15, we agree with?
And 8?
No, yeah, I speak. I mean, I just wondered I'm not too sure about number 1, unless we've had presentations or evidence that's come through and been recorded with council so that we have the evidence if we're questioned about it. I know we can make that decision.
I was suggesting that we go to 70 for that road.
Accept the recommendation.
Accept the recommendation for that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm getting confused. Are we going road by road?
Not necessarily, but what I thought those are the ones that the consultation said that people agree with. So
yes.
If we get them out of the way with the exception of Withy Road, which I think is right, it should be 70.
Yeah.
But Councillor O'Brien.
I haven't.
Just thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 2, Te Tiko Urban. We discussed this at the Te Tiko Residents Association, and all our marae are within that space, and we often have tangianga there, and we have people all over the road. Often they carry the papaku along the road, and so it was a recommendation from our Residents Association, a lot of the people within that space, and I was brought up straight across from there, and I do agree that another 300 metres needs to be added on to cover the area of those marae and the mass gatherings that are there. And so I think that should be a given. That was the very reason why we do that, was the safety of our people in that space in Te Tiko. Very familiar with the space, and it's only another 300 metres down from the marae to keep us safe. And that's right outside where I was brought up. And I've always been an advocate for that, and I think that should be a given. 50 k's to be extended just onto Kahu Road.
So just in regard to what Councillor O'Brien has said, when this first came up at the Te Tiko Residents Association, one of the reasons that really brought it to the attention, there'd just been a tangi on that marae, and they were trying to bring a person in a wheelchair from where they'd parked down the road, and because they couldn't go on the verge, they actually had to go on the road, and there was. And at that stage, it's 100 k's, and there was some near miss. And I think with the increased volume of parked cars, pedestrians on the road, I'd agree with Councillor O'Brien that we need. It's only 350 metres for Pete's sake. I think that's a given. Which really amazes me that we've actually had. You get so many people opposed to that. So you've got a 62%. So you've got to wonder whether they're the people who actually live in the area or they're the people who shortcut from Kawerau through and just want to be able to go really fast. But that's a real dangerous spot of that road, especially that point. So.
I think the difficulty is the consultation doesn't drill down. It's an open consultation, I suppose, and you can make whatever you like. But anyway, we'll
thank you. I'm not going to raise a specific road, but I just wanted to talk a bit about the process of how we go forward, because I think you're in a bit of difficulty, Mr. Chair. It seems to me that there's some examples where there's the public's clearly against the recommendation, and there's no kind of other factors to consider, and I think I agree we should listen to the public on those. There's ones where the majority supports the recommendation and we should go with those. There's 2 others I think that we should drill down into a little bit. One is where they're quite close. So there's one where it's like 55 against 43 and then 2 undecided, which is like, for example, Wainui Road. That's close enough for I think for us to kind of give a bit of further thought to it. And then the other one is there's some where it's not necessarily close, but there's a significant crash history or there's real safety concerns, which I think in a way could trump the numbers. If you're seeing a lot of fatalities, people may or may not be aware of that. So I think those ones as well where, and again I'd go to what's just been raised around Te Tiko Road, and then Ohope Road as well as one that we might want to have a further look at as well.
So that, I mean, for me, that's kind of how I'm approaching it in my head. Yeah. If that's helpful.
Yep, so.
We should go one by one.
Luca, do you want to add a comment, or I'll go to?
Well, I agreed with what you said to start with, that we, and with what everybody else has said, I think, is that we single out those ones where the community view is strong and clear. But I'd like to just say that, when it comes to road fatalities or serious accidents, it's not, there are 21 causes of those things. A major one is distraction and inattention. And then there's drinking and all of those sort of things. It's not just about speed, which I think that the report is very biased towards speed, but I've got an Australian academic study which suggests that inattention and distraction is 60% of road fatalities. People just not paying attention.
But in regard to that, I agree with you, the distraction, people drifting across the road. But if people are only doing 70 k's instead of 100, then you get less people dying and less people serious injuries. So it is interlinked. It's the damage it causes by the drifting. Mr. Chairman, can I suggest we're bouncing all over the place. Can we go through one by one and peel them off?
Oh, we'll do that in a minute, but I would like to invite Councillor Isles, who was chairing the little subcommittee, might like to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair. Before I even go to that point, Taniatua Road is missing out of the table for today. And also, we did have a personal submission from the residents of Kepa Road, and I recall that we did review that at the subcommittee meeting as well, where our recommendation was, which was the current was 80 for Kepa Road, and recommendation of the proposed was 60.
Through the chair, both of those roads the subcommittee did not agree to include in the public consultation document.
Right, but there's no mention that for that very reason they've been...
Yeah, so the public consultation document is what the subcommittee speed limits. What went into the public consultation document is what the subcommittee agreed to. This report is talking about those ones that have been consulted on, because anything we haven't consulted on, we can't change. So anything we haven't consulted on is not included in this report. So those speed limits were not agreed by the subcommittee to be included in the consultation document. So they've basically dropped off the list now, and we're only looking at what has been consulted on, what was agreed to be consulted on.
So are those two likely to be picked up at some later stage?
Well, if we do a 3-yearly review, we could review them again at that stage, or when the councillors direct us to do the next review.
Again, but I wish I'd raised a point of order or an amendment to that previous one, because I agree with Councillor O'Brien. Why do we need the word 3 years in there? We could have just done that review.
It's a given. It's a given.
Okay, all right, it's a given.
I think that's all a work in progress. As staff have said, we can probably review that and change it. But I'll take the point that we go item by item, and so really, if we start at Withy Road, and are we agreed that the proposed 70 k speed limit be the one?
Yes.
We tick that off.
Yep.
Okay, so item 2, Titeko Road, proposed at 50, speed limit of 50 k, so we okay with that?
Yep.
Thornton Road, item 3, Thornton Road, East Bank and West Bank intersections. The proposed is 70 k's for either side of that. Where do you want to go with that?
Can I speak to that, Mr. Chairman? I'm quite horrified that people are saying 70, whatever it is, percent don't want it to go to 70, 50. Oh, no, it's 54 opposed, 41 for, and a few neutral. This is one of the ones that Councillor Tansell said is a high accident rate. They had an accident there, I think it was about a week ago, in which they had to land a helicopter a vicious crash by someone coming outside of a intersection and not looking. There's a number of crashes on that bridge. I actually find the statistics that were put at the bottom of the page, I don't agree with those. I know that the guy who used to run Blue Rock, the company Blue Rock, I know he ended up someone hitting him on the bridge, someone drifting off, but because they're both doing the 100 Ks, he had horrific injuries. Took him a year to get over it. And I think this needs to go down to 70. Plus, we had the lady who had presented to us a few months beforehand, and she presented about how scary it was for people turning into that school. So you have these really high periods of school traffic there. I think for that reason that this is one I'd die in a ditch for. We really need to put this to 70 Ks to try and eliminate some of the serious injuries and death on that bridge.
Councillor Tangels.
Thank you. I support Councillor Dennis on this. The consultation numbers are quite close, and what would tip it for me is that residents in the school have requested it, and that there's a number of complexities around it. So for me, that makes it a pretty strong case to support the recommendation.
Okay, so the proposal is 70 Ks. All those raise your hand. We can take that. Yes, intersection.
Over the bridge.
Is it's a line ball by the people who live around the area, so I'll support it, yep.
Okay, so item 4, Wainuhi Road to... Yeah, 70, yes. Right, that's the proposed, so we're going with the proposed. Yes.
Yep.
So Wainuhi Road...
Probably, but too late, I don't know.
Tio Oyster is proposed at 60.
Yep, agreed.
Councillor Dukes.
Thank you. This is one that I personally would support it going down to 60. It's a high traffic area with turning off into the oyster, fish and chip shop and everything. There's also coming from the farm cycles, it's a cycle track as well on the main road. So this is one that I would like to be supporting for going down to 60 Ks.
Absolutely.
Support. Okay, so support for 60 Ks?
Yep.
No for me, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Councillor James, you got any comment? He's not hearing us. Mayor Luca?
I don't support that one, but...
Okay, so item 4 was as proposed, 60. We had a show of hands.
Maybe it's best to have a show of hands for everything. It's not very clear what's happening.
So, item 5
Mr. Chair, I'm
is
lost.
Thornton Road, State Highway 30 to past Blueberry Corner. And there's been some discussion about having it as a seasonal thing, but we aren't going there. So it's either all or nothing by the sound of things. So that's proposed at 80 Ks, and where are we? It was 51% against and 35% for, so where do you want to take that? Oh, 61, sorry, yes. 61 against changing and 33 for changing. So how do you want to deal with that?
Well, I'm giving preference or bias to the people who actually live in the area and use the road the most. So that's what I'm going mostly on. So I wouldn't be supporting that one.
Change.
You're talking about Thornton Road, SH30?
Yes. So leave it at 100 is your suggestion?
Yeah. I don't support the change, yes.
I would oppose that change, Mr. Chairman, especially in the corners of Blueberry Corner, because they are another real bad accident site, especially for the last right-hand turn before you get to the other side, where the camber's not that great on it. We've done a lot of work on it, but it's not that great. And also it's the entry and exit to the Blueberry fruit place. I accept that there'd been a high accident rate from Airport Road right through to there. But I think if we throw the whole lot out, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There is a number of accidents in those blueberry corners because of the camber, because of the really tight corners, and for that to stay 100 k's is nonsense, especially for people outside of the area who approach it and think, oh, it's 100 k's, we can go around there, and people lose it quite often in there. Most of the locals will only travel at 80 k's because they know that it's a nasty little road. And for us to leave it at 100 k's, I think we're setting people up for injury. And for the people who are the locals who say they go through there, I can't see where you get the figures from. Whether they're the people in Whakatane who go to Tauranga quite often, consider themselves local. But the people, I know the people who live right on the corner in that little farmhouse, and she's kept quite a big first aid kit because she hears a screech of tyres quite often. So even if we turn down the whole thing from State Highway 30, we've got to keep Blueberry Corners at 80 k's.
Councillor Dukes.
I'm going to support the Mayor's comments on this one. I think its consultation there is 61%. There has been significant improvements on that road around there. The turn off into Blueberry Corner does have a separate turning lane to go off, for people turning into Blueberry Corners. So I'm happy to be listening to the consultation on that one, and it's staying at 100.
Okay, so Councillor Boynton.
Sorry, this particular one we've had come across to us a few times. I mean, for me, it feels like we've had it 3 times in our term that's come up, and the reason why it's here again is because it wasn't necessarily supported by council previously, even with the other consultation that had happened. And at that time, we did have other mitigations in which we looked at other stretches of road in which we wanted to have support for speed to be reduced in. Those aren't in here. But so I'm mindful of what the points that have been brought forward around reducing the accidents and things like that, but I'm also mindful of the amount of times that we have already declined this increase. So I'm more inclined, and with the 61%, I'm more inclined what's come through.
Councillor Rolls.
Chair, the recommendation from the subcommittee was that it be seasonally reduced to 80, and there's certainly no pull-off lane for those turning into R&B's Berry Farm. Maybe up at Blueberry Corner, but there's certainly nothing at R&B's, and that's been an issue that's been raised with council over many, many years by Graham, the owner there, and we have no put in the broken yellow lines, which prevents any parking on that road. But again, I would still support the reduction in speed through the summer, through the berry growing season.
Councillor Tundras.
Thank you. Yeah, this is what I'm a bit in 2 minds about. It does come up on you really quickly, those corners, when you're going down there. So I can see the benefit of reducing the speed limit for that small section of the road. I don't know that I'd support a seasonal, just because I'm thinking the cost of how you do that. You changing the signs, or I don't know, it just seems like a bit of a drama to me. I think I'm ending up supporting Councillor Dennis that to go with the recommendation, but it is a bit of a, bit of an unclear one for me.
Yeah, I've already not supported it, but just to correct Councillor Tanchos, the corner doesn't come up on the driver comes up on the corner.
Yeah.
That's the problem all the time.
Staff might wish to comment.
Yes, through you, Chair, just a comment around seasonal signs. Not significant. With something like that, we'd use the folding signs, so they'd go up and down pretty quick and easy. Yep.
So let's have a show of hands for Thornton Road, State Highway 30 past Blueberry Corner, that it stays at 100. All those in favour?
What about Wilson?
Wilson's.
I think I saw a hand.
Wilson, can you hear us? Okay, so those against that, or wishing to go to 80 Ks
With the seasonal.
Oh, no, that's.
Is it 5-5?
5-4. Councillor James hasn't voted.
Oh, just this not here.
So, yeah, so that's 5 for reducing to 80.
Thanks.
and
4 for keeping it 100.
Mr Chairman, would it appease people if we changed it a bit so that the Blueberry Corner part go 80 and then from State Highway 30 to say the Red Barn would be seasonal or would be, I'm just wondering what would appease, I mean, the motion's been passed anyway, so.
And we're recording on that.
Yes, this is just an indicative.
It's just an indicative.
Okay. So indicatively, the motion's passed for 80 Ks. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
okay, so 80 it is for now. So Shore Road
Has support.
has the majority approving the 50 Ks, so are we okay with that?
Yes.
And item 7, which is Thornton Beach Road, is the same?
Yes.
30 Ks, we're okay with that? So West End Road. So it's proposed to go to 30, which is probably the right thing to do, even though the majority of submitters are against it. So,
But the majority living on
well, we don't know that, but so let's have a show of hands for agreeing with the 30.
Yes. Definitely agree because they have come in and presented themselves.
Okay, done. So, item 9, Galatea Road, Waiahau.
No.
So for, oh, sorry about that.
So it's proposed to go to 60, but that is said.
I'd like to speak to that.
65, no, 25.
So the majority of this, and it is a reasonable majority, isn't it? Said to leave it at it is. So let's
No.
have a show of hands to leave it at 80.
No. No, I want to speak to those ones in Waiho.
Yeah, okay, Councillor Rangiao.
So that'll be from 9 to 12. All of those ones are included in 9 to 12 with the proposed. Even though these are high opposing the change, on those roads, there has been a high consultation with me within our community and on Pukeho Road, why it's gone to that level, because they're all gravel roads. We have the marae right on the corner, and then on the other corner we have the Urupa, and then we do have residents who come over there. We used to have the milk trucks go there. That is the back road that a lot of our residents from the marae, they take instead of the main road to go up there. The one that comes up on not Pukeho, Tawhia Road. Once again, that's all loose gravel, but we also have a high whānau papakaina up that end too. So we have the school bus that goes up that area and also the milk tankers, and it has been raised over there, if we can just slow it down. So I was a bit confused with the opposition of the change to the realities of the whānau who I have engaged with staying at Waiho. So I was quite surprised at seeing the outcome of the data. But I would actually absolutely support that the proposed changes that are made in here, that it is upheld, to be honest.
Okay, so let's start that again. So could we, Councillor, could we group 9, 10, 11 and 12? They're all proposed to go to 60. Can we group them together as a tick off? So,
Yes,
so what I'll
yes,
say is,
yes.
all those in favour of it going to 60?
On those 1, 2, 3, 4 roads.
Yep, on those from 9 to 12. And we've already spoken on the main drag, because a lot of it is, we've got Papakaina villages on the main road, but because it is a main road and we have a lot of concentration of the fruit trucks, the logging trucks, all the different trucks that come past, it has been a request that we actually slow that area down. And plus it's close to the school as well, so there's another added bonus around slowing that traffic down close where the school is. Yeah, yeah, as well, yeah.
So show of hands that they go to 60, those 1, 2, 3, 4 roads?
Koe te mea mohi tautoko anā.
Many is there? 1, 2, 3.
6.
6. Wilson, you want to comment?
Oh, his hand.
No, I was just voting for 60.
Where were you before when we needed you?
Hang on, he was there, but there's a bit of a hiccup on that one.
No, he didn't have his hand out.
Okay, so the number, we've got 6, 4.
I'll support too.
Okay.
Can I say that, because we haven't voted each of them indicative, and to be fair, if Wilson did want to have a view on
Comes
the
back to
previous
council.
one, I think we can do.
It'll come back into that, yeah.
Because we haven't voted. It's
Yeah,
just-
that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
What we're gonna do and then vote on it.
Okay. Item 13, Galatea Road, Matahina Dam. Is proposed to go to 80.
There was good reasoning that,
No,
well,
I spoke to that one last time, and it's, they have to traffic manage, if they've got work and they're doing anything there, they have to traffic manage that anyway, and the traffic is reduced to well below 80 k's at that time. They're not there using it on that space.
That's saying that the weight of those trucks was flicking those plates up.
Well, the 79% of submitters are saying no.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
They were driving the truck.
Very familiar with that space. You have to be mad to be going 100 k's down that hill. Either side of that dam. You have to be
Yeah, exactly. You can't do it
stupid. You have to
anyway.
be silly. So I support what one of my engineers is suggesting, because there's no way, I wouldn't even go 80 along there, on that stretch. It's dangerous. It's just a death wish if you're going to go any faster than 80 k's.
So there's Galatea Road and Roto Taha Road, which is round by the dam. They're both suggested to go to 80 k's. Are we have a show of hands to agree with that?
Just for some clarification, Roto Taha Road is a metal road and it goes into the bush. And you certainly can't go 100 k's along there either.
Yeah.
Just foolish. That's where the boat ramp is down. It goes around the back to the quarries.
Yeah. Can you just do 13 and 14 separately?
Okay, so request to do them separately. So we'll start with 13, which is Galatea Road, Matahina Dam, goes down to 80 k's. All those support that?
Yep.
And Wilson?
On the top of the dam.
6.
Well, you have to, no, it's too
So
steep.
80 k's it is. Roto Taha Road, Matahina Dam, proposed to go to 80 k's. Any comment?
It's a dirt road again.
So, favour of 80 k's?
It was proposed to be 60. And, well, it was 60 from the that came forward to the subcommittee. And those other dirt roads just up the road have all been reduced to 60. So wouldn't that be keeping that one?
Yep. So it's in favour of 80 k's.
I think we have a majority.
Reed Road is the submitters approved. The majority of submitters approved that.
Nice. Yep.
So We're okay with that?
Yep.
Thank you. Airport, Tassel Drive, proposed to go to 30, which is, I think, just where you come in gate, isn't it? Where you're 400 metres in the airport precinct itself.
Can I just clarify about, because this is about reducing speed, that is correct? That there's an increase of speed for Reed Road?
That is correct. It's the previous speed limit was set quite a long way out of Ruatoki. So what we're finding is people weren't paying any attention because there were no houses or anything, so we've actually brought it closer. So it's just a change in the sort of where the boundary is to be more land use.
It's more of an administrative change. So the actual physical speed signs are at the location that is being requested to be changed to, and that was done in consultation with the community quite a few years ago. But because the legislation to change speed limits has been up in the air for the last 5 years, we haven't legally been able to actually change that speed limit. So the signs say it's 100 k's in that couple of 100-metre section, but the actual legal speed limit is still 70 k's. So it's trying to correct what's already in place.
It's correcting something. It's
Yeah,
not
there'll be
sort
no-
of singling out a certain community to encourage them to speed.
No, and it was done in consultation with the community at their request.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
Chair, Tassel Road, by the look of the diagram, doesn't start from where the old cattle stop was, although that's where the name for the Tassel Drive starts. It's a couple of hundred metres in, isn't it?
Yeah, the speed change is only the last 445 metres, so the requested reduction in length that was discussed at the subcommittee is reflected in this recommended length.
Thank you.
So, those in favour of that area of road, which is not a lot, but it's into the airport where the parking area and pedestrians are, is proposed to go to 30. So all those in favour of that? Passed, thank you. Item 17 is Valley Road, Commerce Street to just past the waterworks, really, isn't it? And of course, bearing in mind that's a residential area, so that really makes sense to go to 50 from 70. So there was, yes.
Cruising along. I'm a no, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so
I'm a no.
I'll ask the question as proposed at 50 k's. All those raise your hand if you agree with that. Those that wish to remain at 70? Wilson, were you 50 or 70?
No, it's gone.
I was 50. I was 50.
Okay.
Well, you lost.
We're still, so
You lost that one.
the numbers were 7 to 3, so it stays at 70. Ahopi Road, and this is from Otawaiwiri Road to Pahudakara Avenue.
The correction?
And the current is 80 and the proposed is 60. But I think it's actually 60 now, isn't it?
No, there's a temporary 60 k's on it.
Temporary 60 at the moment.
Current 80, temporary 60. The proposal goes back to 80.
Maybe the staff would like to explain it a bit to us, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. My apologies. We made a few changes, last-minute changes to the table, and we ended up with an error. So not only is the 100k current speed limit incorrect, the current speed limit is 80, the recommended and proposed speed limit from staff is 60. So there is still the decision by council, whether to not agree with that, but the recommendation from council is 60, from staff is 60.
What were the community consulted on?
Community were asked specifically whether they supported the 80 or the 60, and so that's where 64% supported the 80 and 36% supported the 60.
Okay, so with those amendments there, so the proposal is just to basically stay at 60.
Can I speak to it first before we put our hands up?
Yes.
I know that in our road safety operational group, that the police spoke of two that they really wanted to have at 60. One was the one past the oyster farm, and we've already agreed to this. The other one was this one, because my understanding, the staff could correct me, it was the police that asked us to drop it temporarily down to 60 because of the high crash rate there. And when I spoke to the sergeant in charge, Shane Talby, about 4 months ago, he was horrified that we'd actually think of changing it back up to 80. And one of the reasons is it's not so much the speed, it's actually on that first curve to the right up the top, the camber's wrong on it. And as some of my fire brigade mates in the Whakatane brigade say, there's something weird on that corner that causes cars to spin out. And I remember during a rainstorm about 3 or 4 weeks ago, quite a few ended up in the bank because of either the gradient, and they're not sure what it is. And so I think, you know, if we've got police are saying they want it to stay at 60 because of all their assessment, the amount of accidents they go to it, and it has reduced the accidents a bit since we've had it at 60, then I think we should pay attention to that, and we should be aware of like, obviously I really focus on death and serious injuries a lot, and there are a lot of cars go off the side or into others going up that area. It's got a few vicious bends that if you're going too fast you can drift over the line, and so I'd like to think that we'd do the good thing and keep it at 60.
Before I invite Councillor Dukes, it's interesting that Mokoroa and Hopi have reduced to 60 and people are still peeling off. You know, and I noticed the fencing in Mokoroa has been attacked twice. In fact, this morning there's hardly any left up the top. Anyway, Councillor Dukes.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Irrespective of how we vote on this one, I think that we seriously need to look at the road. I've had a lot of people have said it's the surface is too smooth at the moment, which is why they're going off, irrespective of the speed. I had someone just in the shop just generally talking that their sister had driven off and she was doing 40 k's and she'd gone off into the bank. She just slid off the road, even though she was actually only doing 40 k's because she was a young, new and experienced driver. So I seriously think that there is something wrong with the road that we actually do need to look at. And I just want to say that, irrespective of how this vote ends up, that there's too many accidents, whatever the speed.
Mayor Luca?
I would just like to caution Councillor Dennis on drawing conclusions from very weak statistics. If a number of accidents goes from 5 in 1 year to 3 in another, that doesn't mean that, that's within the noise of the statistics. So I can't.
Councillor Dantos?
I didn't actually have my hand up, but I will take the opportunity to speak, if you give me the mic. I do support the recommendation because I just think 80 is actually too fast for that stretch of road. A lot of people will go 60 anyway going up because it's a pretty steep hill, but coming down, going 80 around those bends is hairy. I think it's just makes sense to me to put it at a reasonable speed.
I like driving fast, but but I do manage to stick to the speed limit. But it's surprising how many people, even going up Mokoroa, race past you and say. Anyway, how do we monitor those or do whatever? But anyway, Councillor O'Brien.
I'm just in support of Councillor Dennis. I think it's 60 is I drive that every day. I see too many accidents on that road regardless. I support the 60 key.
So let's have a show of hands then to.
I just wanted to mention too that I probably will support this. I am mindful though, that when we make these decisions to support the speed limits where the public have opposed in the consultation, that even though there's statistics on crashes and incidences. There's still those people who it's been impacted by are part of our community. Many of the families who suffer from these accidents need to be acknowledged in these decisions as well. Thank you.
Okay, so I propose that we have a show of hands for Hopi Road at 60. Five, 80. You got a view, Wilson?
You either in or you're not, Mr. Chair.
That's 3 against, so that's 5 for, 60. 60.
Right, 5 for 60, so that's the majority. Okay, the last one is Titeco Road, Titeco to Edgecombe from, and it's from Okahu Road to Main Road. Proposed to go to 80 from 100. Any view?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was on the proposed set. I've seen too many of my family get killed on that road in the past. It has been a while, but I've been affected by that. So I'll be voting for 80, but whatever people think. But yeah, I've seen too many of my people get killed on that road.
Any other comments?
Once again, Mr Chairman, that is a high accident rate. I think when you look through the statistics, it's got more accidents than any other road. There are a number of horses that tend to roam along that road, and I know of 2 people that have suffered serious injuries and been kicked by horses in their cars. There was a young child recently that got quite badly hurt along there. A number of houses on the side of the road. And there are quite strong corners in it too. I think it needs to be 80.
Okay, so I'll put that up. Those agree with the speed limit going to 80? Six.
6 for.
So against?
Against.
So that's approved. So that's the list. Thank you for that. Still conscious of what our submitters say, but we've got to make a recommendation. So I suppose what we're saying here is this is a recommendation. When it comes to council, if we have a change of view, that's an opportunity to change that view. But so this is where we've got to today. So the recommendation on 4 is that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee recommends that council adopts. Now we've adopted all those, I think.
All except 17.
All except for 17.
17, which was the stage. So what I'll say is that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee recommends that the council adopts the proposed speed limit reductions outlined below, with the exception of item 17, which is Valley Road, to remain at 70 k's. So do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Yeah. So Councillor Dennis and Councillor O'Brien, we debated it enough?
Chair, do you think, as you rightly say, we've literally gone against the majority of the submitters? Do we sort of try to look at the possible questioning going forward in these surveys? I think it didn't start off, do you live on that road? It started off, do you go work or do you attend a school on that road? Then you went to and then there were so many other questions in the end, you were either going to tick them all. Is it a true reflection of what we were really trying to achieve from this survey? I know people Valley Road's a good example, where we come in from good old Taniao to Waimana and beyond. Can we quantify how we've basically gone against a majority of the submitters?
we could add a rider to why we've come to that decision, I think.
I guess the other point is too, Chair, that when we had this come to the Infrastructure Committee on the 10th of April, I think it was, we then appointed a subcommittee to go out and or to convene and review the proposed speeds, and that happened on the 28th of April. And it was after the 28th of April that the submissions were then called for these. So there was some degree of discrepancies, obviously, when we go through the submitters as to where we arrived at, as to what the submitters were actually asking.
I think your committee charge was to organise what was going out to submissions.
Correct.
And we probably should have had you meet again after the submissions.
But we didn't have that delegated authority.
No, you didn't, but we probably should have.
In hindsight.
To round that off, really.
Yes.
So to be helpful to staff in terms of the direction. So I guess, Annie and Joe, if you could take away how the submissions are couched in perhaps the future. I mean, you can't cover everything because it'd be just there forever, really, but how do you probably define it a bit more, do you, rather than have a bit of a broad brush question? Tell me what you think.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I think if we had our time again, I think the opportunity to take some more face-to-face consultation would actually be really useful in these instances. Just because there are some issues here which people, if they're just rushing through a submission, they may not pay much attention to, but if you have a chance to sit and talk to them, you might be able to point them out a bit more. Obviously, it's a lot more resource intensive to do that, particularly something that covers the whole district like this. But that could be one way to improve the response rate and to, get some more meaningful information. And the other way is, as you say, we can segregate it and potentially do some more targeted mail drops or something to the actual residents to make sure that the residents are having their voice and are fully aware of the consultation process.
I suppose it would be helpful if you can, I guess there's a bit of privacy involved, but do you live on this road? Is a question which has been raised, I think.
It's the second question in the questionnaire. It's not the first question.
Right. Yeah. So anyway.
Oh, we finished the debate?
Yes.
On the recommendation?
Yes. So Councillor Tangos has a comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to test where we got to on the second one, because I don't think I got a chance. We skipped through quite quickly and then we slowed down and we went through each one with quite a lot of consideration. Can I just test where we got to on the second one?
Second one of what?
The second, Te Teko Road urban area.
Was to go to 50.
To go to 50, okay, thank you.
I found it really helpful at the subcommittee when you actually put the maps up and showed us the area that we were talking about, and I just would have felt that would have added value today to have gone through that process as well, because we're not all familiar with all of the areas within the district.
They're there.
I just mean up on the screen, because then you're not having to scroll down it. Yeah, sorry, I mean on the screen.
Yep, no, point noted.
Okay, so we covered everything we want to cover in debate, or Councillor Boynton?
I just wanted to highlight that over this term we have had extensive consultation regarding speed limits, and we have predominantly had a negative feedback on those proposed reduced speed limits. This feels like the third time we have come across some of the similar places, similar roads in which we have had strong pushback from the public. Today's decision and the amount that have been passed, I'm quite surprised with the amount that's been supported, not because there is anything wrong regarding the arguments that councillors have put forward, but I'm surprised because I do have a concern regarding the public reaction to us going against what literally in the figures show in percentage-wise many do not support. But I think it's important that we highlight in our communications to the wider public the points that were raised here and also the historic presentations and evidence on specific roads that were approved today that had the opposite in the statistics. And of course to emphasise that it is about the safety of the road. But I do agree that we do need to tidy up the clarity of the consultation that we have. And yes, it may take more resources to be able to ensure that we are specifically talking to those impacted groups and those residents, but I think for the sake of making it clear to public opinion, so that when they do have consultation again, they can trust, because I think that's the missing factor, they can trust that someone is going to get a hold of me, that I'm going to be involved in this situation, and that we don't have the concern of influence from either outside parties or groups who may have a certain agenda who are more able to utilise the current consultation process to be able to come out with a perceived outcome. So, thank you.
Chair, did we add that rider to recommendation 4 with regards?
Do you want to spell it out?
Well, I had spelt it out, I thought. That the process that we had to undertake those reviews was asked about face, basically. You know, we were only charged with going as a subcommittee to review those proposed changes put forward by staff in April, and then the document went out for consultation until the 29th of June. So, as Councillor Duke's already alluded to, as local councillors with a bit of a knowledge of the history of our roads within our district, but not all, we made those we supported those proposed recommendations, which have now proved on the majority to be against the public's wish.
Okay, so Mr. Das has made a note of those points, and they can be added in the minutes. And I think the point that Councillor Boynton makes is important, because we want to encourage people to consult, to make submissions. But I feel that during this period of debate, we have looked at the submissions, but also considered other factors, and so we're probably privy to more information than the public are in some ways, and so we're elected to make right decisions, and I think that's where we've gone through today. But it's important. It's important to say that we've actually considered the submissions rather than just swept them under the table. So if we've debated that, I'll just put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried.
Again, I'm against, Mr. Chair, and I'll have it recorded. I'll stick with the original plan that you articulated at the beginning. Thank you.
Yep. Right, so that concludes our meeting, and I'll invite Councillor O'Brien. So just before we depart, the staff have asked that we use our retiring room for an upgrade. Do that, please, and apparently we can pick them up tomorrow. Thank you.